All right, man, peace. So, brothers, for any of us who've watched the NBA for a long enough period of time, we know that superstars have a high degree of clout when it comes to coaching maneuvers, coaching changes, things of that nature. Normally, the GM will start to interact directly with the superstar in deciding if a coaching change needs to be made. And that goes all the way back to the 1960s. There's a reason why Red Auerbach picked Bill Russell to become the first so-called black coach in the history of the NBA. They had a very close relationship. Red Auerbach is not only one of the greatest coaches in the history of the NBA, he is also one of the greatest general managers. This is a dude in Red Auerbach who drafted Larry Bird a year before he actually entered the NBA. This is a person, Red Auerbach, who was able to swing a trade to get Robert Parrish to the Boston Celtics and was also able to draft Kevin McHale despite the fact that the Boston Celtics had won over 60 games the year before. This is a person in Red Auerbach who was able to get to the level where he could draft Len Bias the year after they won the championship in 1986. So just the fact that he was working hand in hand with Bill Russell shows you how close the star player almost always is with the GM, and sometimes with the head coach if it's the same person. Now, we know in the 1980s, there are rumblings that Larry Bird may have had something to do with getting Bill Fitch removed. We know about Magic Johnson and Paul Westhead. We know about Michael Jordan and Doug Collins. This has always been the case. The superstar is always going to get blamed, sometimes justifiably, for when the coach gets removed. We definitely know about LeBron James. LeBron James has had more coaches than Elizabeth Taylor has had husbands. And it's because many times he wants to be the coach. So now Kawhi Leonard has risen to the level where there's going to be some scrutinizing of what occurs surrounding him. Because some of the expectations that people had for Kawhi have been forced to be expanded in the aftermath of some of the machinations that he seemed to be the hub of or the source of when he left Toronto. I'm on record as saying that I thought he should have stayed in Toronto. I thought that that was the perfect place for him. It was a nice, quiet environment, a city that's cosmopolitan, phenomenal front office. In my view, best coach in the NBA, and Nick Nurse. I said that from last season, so it did not surprise me when he won the NBA Coach of the Year. But Kawhi had other plans for himself. He wanted to go back to LA to be closer to his family, or at least allegedly that's the story. So he goes there, and I think that he found out something about Doc Rivers that many of us find out about people that we admire from afar but don't really know that well. Sometimes, whether it's a job or a neighborhood or a woman, you see something from afar that you think you want to link up with or be a part of or enter into. And once you're there, you're like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I think that happened with Kawhi Leonard and Doc Rivers. I believe that Doc Rivers has been riding high based on that one championship that he's won for way too long. He won a championship in 2008 with the Boston Celtics, and he's still pretty much enjoying the aftermath of that. For some strange reason, people believe that he's this outstanding coach. And for a long time, I thought that as well. But it's very clear to me that there's something missing with Doc Rivers where he cannot win the big game. And every once in a while, you have coaches that I call transformative coaches, meaning you bring them onto your franchise and they could turn a terrible team into a team that's winning 45 to 55 games every year, but they can't get over the hump. And sometimes it's because they don't have that championship pedigree as a coach, and other times it's just because they were never able to get a superstar to play under them. Doc Rivers, as we all know, has blown multiple 3-1 leads. He's blown 3-2 leads. I saw that Boston Celtics team blow a 3-2 lead against the Lakers in 2010, when in my view they were the better team. We saw the Clippers blow a 3-1 lead, I believe in 2015, when they had the lead over the Houston Rockets. And of course, we saw what happened this season. I think that Doc Rivers is a little bit too infatuated with the Marxist movement known as the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think that he was doing that for brand building. I believe that he thought it was going to curry favor with his players. That's a part of it, just in my view. And it blew up in his face because the composition of the team is not good. They have older players who I think were very comfortable in a certain lifestyle. Everybody does not want to win a championship. It takes a phenomenal amount of grit and focus to win a championship. There are certain guys like a Pat Bev who do a lot of fist pumping and facial gesturing. But when you get to the finals, to win a championship, it takes a phenomenal amount of resolve, composure, and calm. You have players like Lou Williams, who's very talented offensively, but likes to do his own thing. The Clippers had no point guard to run the system. And let me say this, Kawhi Leonard has to take a major hit here, particularly as a leader. We know for a fact he's not that. But also as a superstar player, you have to set the tone in a different way. You have to be amenable to different environments. If you're not, then stay where you came from. That's why I say he should have stayed in Toronto, because in LA he was expected, I believe, to be more verbal. When he wasn't verbal, Doc Rivers had to make up the difference there, and Doc does not have the coaching expertise or proficiency to bridge that gap, to make up the difference in what the other players would be expecting from Kawhi and getting from Doc. After a while, there's only so much that a coach can say. So to make a long story short, that was a big bubble fuck situation, that LA Clippers situation, by the time they got to the bubble, ironically enough. Because Montrezl Harrell, I mean, they're trying to take nice bench players and turn them into cornerstone players for a championship team, and it just doesn't happen that way. Montrezl Harrell can't even catch the basketball. Every time they throw him the ball, this dude's fumbling the basketball. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
According to reports, Doc Rivers and Clippers owner Steve Ballmer had several lengthy phone conversations following their Game 7 loss to the Nuggets.
The reason why they had several lengthy phone conversations is because Steve Ballmer clearly loves Doc. But Steve Ballmer also knows that in the conversation that he's having with the star player and the superstar player of the team, those being Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they're saying that it's time for Doc to go. So, you know, when somebody likes you, but they're hearing a bunch of bad stuff about you from other sources that they have to listen to, it's almost like he keeps calling Doc, most likely to hear Doc try to convince him that what he's hearing about Doc from other players is not true. And I think that after a while, Steve Ballmer realized, look, Kawhi Leonard does not like Doc. Kawhi came from two programs that were ran by arguably the two best coaches in the NBA, or two of the top three, in Popovich and Nick Nurse, where on defense, all the players knew where they were supposed to be. And I think that bothered Kawhi more than anything else. Because Kawhi understands that in championship situations, your superstar is going to have those 7 for 25, 6 for 24 Kobe Bryant type games. But on defense, the team has to be knit together to the point where you can weather that. You cannot expect your superstar to shoot 13 for 23 in every Game 7. If they have one of those 8 for 21, 9 for 27 type games, the defense has to be on one accord. Michael Jordan shot 9 for 26 in Game 7 against the Indiana Pacers in 1998. But nobody talks about it because they won, because their defense was superlative. The Clippers, there were so many leaks in their defense, it was incredible. And that's what I think pissed off Kawhi.
Also spoke with several players, including Kawhi and Paul George, about moving on from Rivers. The report said the players' opinion did not sway Ballmer, and it was his decision in the end to move on from Doc as the Clippers' head coach.
Bullshit. Ballmer's going to take the fall for firing Doc because he does not want Kawhi to take the fall. If Kawhi Leonard tells Ballmer, I need Doc Rivers back, Ballmer's not firing Doc Rivers. Once again, this is a walk year for Kawhi. I'm talking about this upcoming season. He can walk after this next season. So it's obvious that Kawhi did not tell Ballmer what he needed to be told in order to make Doc Rivers stay. Kawhi has the power to do that, and he chose not to. And I have no problem with that because I think that Doc is overrated anyway.
Shannon, do you think it was actually Kawhi's call to fire Doc?
Kawhi could have stopped it. And if you do not give an endorsement, it is an indictment.
Agreed.
What Kawhi Leonard said after the Game 7 loss, he said that's when it comes to team chemistry, knowing what you should run to get the ball in spots, or just if someone is getting doubled or they're packing the paint, get smarter as a team. Basketball IQ has got to get better.
In other words, and I agree with Shannon here, that was a clear attack on Doc Rivers. I believe that Kawhi was frustrated about Doc's inability to make adjustments throughout the entire season. I think that Doc thought if he coddled Kawhi then that would, put him in that level of favor when it comes to how Kawhi viewed him. And no, Kawhi's trying to win a championship. And Kawhi needs to take some, he needs to take some correction as well. There's some things that he's going to have to change. He's going to have to show up for practice. He's going to have to play more games. But I see why he was upset with Doc.
Who's in charge of getting people in the right spot? Who's in charge of if someone's packing the paint, this is what we need to do. He said Doc Rivers did fail to do that. Skip, this is what we know. They can say all they want to that Steve Ballmer went on this. No, he did not. Because Steve Ballmer is in a situation no owner wants to find themselves in. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George can opt out. They don't have a first-round draft pick until 2026. They've mortgaged their future. Are you telling me that he's going to go against the wishes of Kawhi Leonard, who can opt out with no draft picks? He never wants to be what the Clippers used to be. Skip, Clippers were laughing stock. At least now people take them serious.
Absolutely.
Kawhi Leonard could have stopped it. If he says, I want Doc back, Doc Rivers is the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers. That's fact. Now, he can say he went it alone. Why you would ask him if you're going to go it alone? If you worth $70 million, and you're going to ask a man that's worth $100 million. For what? Kawhi Leonard could have saved Doc Rivers' job. He did not. Even if he doesn't, Skip, in a situation like this, if someone comes to you and you don't give them an endorsement, it's an indictment. And they will, and the person that's asking you the question will take it as such. Someone asks you, hey, Skip, what you think about that? Well, he's pretty good. Oh, Skip Saber. No, that's not what you want to hear. Man, I like him. He's a hard-working guy. He's honest.
I guarantee you that Kawhi Leonard did not say that Doc Rivers is pretty good. I promise you that Kawhi Leonard said there were certain situations, because playoff basketball is situational basketball. There were situations where Doc left a lot to be desired. And I'm sure that Steve Ballmer listened to that and it was duly noted. But I guarantee you, Kawhi did not sit there and say Doc Rivers is pretty good, because pretty good is not going to cut it. Kawhi has won 2 championships. He's been in multiple finals. He's had deep playoff runs. Almost every playoff run since he's been in the league has been deep. And he knows what it takes. And I believe that he looked at Doc Rivers and said, he's not a championship level coach, at least not on the level of the championship level coaches that I've had.
I love the passion that when she does such and such. Okay, that's an endorsement. But if they come to you and you don't give them endorsement, that's an indictment. Kawhi Leonard indicted Doc Rivers, and that's why Doc Rivers does not have that job. He blamed Doc Rivers. But I want to know, Nick Nurse didn't get an ounce of credit when Kawhi Leonard was on the Toronto Raptors and they won that title. He got no credit. It was all Kawhi Leonard.
Nick Nurse was extraordinary as a coach. The reason why Kawhi Leonard got so much credit is because he had one of the great playoff runs in the last 30 years. You have to look at some of Kobe's playoff runs, of course, Jordan's playoff runs, Hakeem in 95, and some of LeBron's playoff runs. That's what Kawhi Leonard did last year. That's why he got so much credit. And that's why you gave him so much credit, Shannon Sharp, because you wanted him to come join the Lakers. You didn't start getting on Kawhi Leonard until he basically shitted on your boy this past July. Oh, I should say July of 2019.
Now Kawhi Leonard goes and they gag. He gagged in 4 losses. In the second half, he shot 24%. In a game 7, with the money, the cyborg, he feels nothing. He has no emotion. He doesn't know what pain is. 1 for 11 in the second half. 0 points in the fourth quarter. 2 points in the second half. Skip wearing a keychain. You know what? I got something for you, though. I got a little special treat. You better. I got something special for you.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I got one for you, too. I'm going to wear a goat mask.
No. Ain't got no buffer room for one goat up here. I bet.
I'll wear a crown to commemorate LeBron's 4th ring. How about that?
Nope. We don't want no parts of you. We going it alone.
Okay, so before any Clippers topic, I have to make a public service announcement. Dear people watching, the Clippers lost to the Nuggets. I was wrong. Kawhi stunk in the second half of Game 7.
6.
But Kawhi was actually really good in the fourth quarter of Game 6 and in the fourth quarter of Game 5. Look it up.
No,
okay.
He was okay.
Now back to
Not
business.
Good. Okay.
So, how do you know, Mr. Sharp,
Yes.
on cross-examination,
Yes.
How do you know that Kawhi didn't tell Steve Ballmer when he called Kawhi, I love Doc, I think we should keep him? How do you know he didn't say that?
Because he already laid it out, and he laid it out expertly. And I've said the same thing. They know that Kawhi has a walk year coming up. If Kawhi says, I want Doc to stay, then Doc stays. Simple as that.
Kept him. Skip, you have no...
How do you know that?
Skip, let's say this. Because Kawhi Leonard can opt out after next year. So can Paul George. So you have the potential of losing 2 superstars, and you have no capital to get your long draft picks until 2026. So you traded your first-round pick this year to get Marcus Morris. So 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 are gone. You lost the pick from Miami with the swaps, and they get to swap with you. Sam Presti said, okay, you want Paul George? What you willing to give up for him? And Kawhi Leonard said, if you get Paul George, I will come. So you had to give up 4 first-round draft picks and swaps. So there's no way, Steve Ballmer, with the possibility, Skip, if I had him for another 5 years, I can say, nah, Kawhi, I'm going to do what I want to do.
That's a lot of nothing, though. I mean, they gave up 4 first-round draft picks, but the Clippers are going to win in the mid to upper 50s every year. They've been doing that for the past 10 years. I mean, I give them credit for the Landry Shamet draft pick, and, of course, the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander pick. That was a phenomenal pick. But you have to maneuver your way up the draft board anyway. They're a win-now team. Of course, it's not good that they don't have a first-round draft pick until after 2026. But, I mean, how many of those guys are going to come onto a team that's a win-now team and make that heavy an impact anyway? I mean, unless you're fortunate like the Miami Heat and you get a Tyler Hero, but you have to develop that type of a player. The Miami Heat are great at developing players.
Go anywhere. But because he can opt out after next year, you're not running that risk. No way, no how.
So, the ESPN story says, nothing the players told Steve Ballmer, according to sources, changed Ballmer's mind about moving on from Doc Rivers.
That's the narrative that Steve Ballmer is going to put out to the media because he does not want Kawhi to get the blame.
Nothing Kawhi told him. So, you're saying it was passive-aggressive, where he might have just sat back and said, I don't know.
You're going to do what you're going to do.
And you think that damned him with faint praise, right?
I do.
I agree.
Who told Skip Bayless? This is what Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless said he started covering the Lakers in 1976, which, if I'm not mistaken, might have been Kareem's first year in L.A. And he said this was a superstar. He said, that's what one thing Jerry West and Pat Riley said superstars run the NBA.
No, you win with superstars. Yes.
But they run this league here. Because this is what we know. Larry Bird wanted a different coach. Casey Jones started coaching. Magic Johnson wanted a different coach. They got a different coach. Even after Paul Westhead won a title.
Agreed. But there was a lot of things going on in that Laker locker room. There was a lot of jealousy of Magic because of his closeness to the owner, Jerry Buss. There was a lot going on in there. They had to clean house. That's why they ended up getting rid of Norm Nixon as well.
James said, enough of David Blatt, and he was history.
Out of there.
Yep. There you go.
Okay, it is, Skip.
And what did LeBron James do in his first year in Miami? He went upstairs to Riles, as he called him.
Yes.
And he said, when are you going to coach this team? Meaning, get this kid out of here.
Right.
I'm done with this Spo kid.
Right.
He's not ready for this. He's in over his head.
Right.
That's what was reported.
Yes.
And I'm sure that is what occurred. And once again, kudos to Pat Riley for being the person that he is, the alpha that he is, and telling LeBron James to get the fuck up out of my office.
So Riles said, I think I'm going to stick with it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Was that the beginning of the end of the relationship between LeBron James and Pat Riley?
Maybe.
I'm sure it didn't help, but I think that LeBron James was forced to understand that he was the player and he was not going to have the influence that he wanted. But it also made him a better player under Eric Spoelstra because it gave him no outs.
Difference was he had LeBron under contract for 3 more years.
Okay.
Agreed.
LeBron couldn't go anywhere. He got an opt-out after next season.
Steve Ballmer is one of those guys, one of those internet millionaires. Billionaires, I should say. He first was a millionaire. But who did it his way. And he wants results, and he wants them now. And when you don't give him results, when he expected championship, or at least finals, and you fail miserably, where you are in charge all the way through the series, except at the end.
Right.
Heads are going to roll. That's just the way he operates. That's how he got to be worth $70 billion.
Absolutely, but once again, he also understands that in order for his team to remain viable, he has to listen to Kawhi Leonard, and whatever Kawhi Leonard wants has to occur, because if not, Kawhi could leave. This is not like running Microsoft. This is totally different. You have to work hand in hand with your best player. So Kawhi must have given the co-signature to get rid of Doc Rivers. Also keep in mind that I'm sure that it had to hurt Doc that now he had to coach Paul George. As we all know, there's a personal issue between Doc Rivers and Paul George that involved Doc Rivers' daughter. And that almost became an issue in the first round matchup against the Mavericks, where you had Seth Curry talking all type of shit to Paul George, calling him a bitch ass nigga and all that, because he's now married to Doc Rivers' daughter. Now, as we know, or as I've already laid out, I shouldn't say as we know, but as I've already laid out, the Curry family is a Masonic family. It's a Luciferian family, as is the Rivers family. I'll probably be covering that in another video. But there was a unification there. Now, one of my early videos on my YouTube channel was covering a commercial that Paul George did that to me showed that he was a Monarch athlete and a Luciferian as well. It basically was an encoded salutation to the quote-unquote sun god, Baal or Apollo, in which he cryptically said the term 666. He said, when I was 6, when I was 6, when I was 6. So I have very little doubt that there was an attempt to arrange a marriage between Doc Rivers' daughter and Paul George flaked out, and Doc Rivers ended up linking up his daughter with one of the Curry boys. Either way, just to get back to the point, I'm sure that Doc Rivers did not want to have to coach Paul George, and I'm sure that there's no sleep lost by Paul George knowing that Doc Rivers is no longer the coach of the Clippers.
He just paid, I forget what the price tag was, but he bought the Forum. $400 million, and he's going to invest $1 billion in a new arena there to rival SoFi Stadium, I'm sure.
Yes.
That will be the new home of the Los Angeles Clippers, so they can get out of the basement at Staples Center and go out toward LAX, the airport, and live out where it all started for Showtime Lakers at the fabulous Forum.
Skip, he can build a $10 billion The Clippers are never going to replace the Lakers. The Lakers got...
Doesn't matter. He's trying to rebuild a culture, or trying to, I should say, start a new culture. So you can't poo-poo what he's trying to do.
Big of a head start. That's like an upstart company trying to replace what we... No, you can't do that, Skip. I want to know the company that's going to outdo Apple. So who's coming up with something that's going to be bigger than Apple? Because Apple got too big of a head start. Google...
Shannon Sharp, stop rambling about companies. You don't have a boss mentality. You're a worker. You're an employee. That's the mentality that you have. You're never going to have a boss mentality. We saw that when you tried to shit on Kyrie Irving, just mentioning that maybe the black players should form their own league. So stop speaking on stuff that's above your level of comprehension. You're a good boy. You're a good employee. In order for people to be great, they have to think in a way that no one else thinks. And they have to believe in themselves in a way that no one else is going to believe. If you listen to people like Shannon Sharp your whole life, you're going to end up working at a fucking gas station unless you're a super athlete.
Too big of a head start. You might come up and you might have a nice situation where you have a market cap value of $100 billion. But they got too big of a head start. The Lakers got 50 plus years in front of you, Skip, and you've been terrible for 50 of those years that you...
None of that shit matters. In order for you to grab hold of an environment, you have to focus on the youth. It's not about having a 50-year head start. If the Clippers are able to become successful, they focus on the youth. Within 2 generations, they could have the city, depending on their level of success.
With the Lakers, living in the basement.
Never.
Living in the basement.
Yep.
That's what you're supposed to.
So, Steve Ballmer, listen to Doc Rivers. Legitimate excuses to me, or reasons why we failed. Number one, no dominant leader emerged other than me. I was always the strongest voice in the room because we know this. Kawhi's no big vocal leader.
No, he's not. He's no vocal leader, Skip. He's not. He leads with his play. Popovich said it. Say, look, Kawhi's a phenomenal talent. He's a great player. He's not a leader. That's Manu. That's Patty Mills. If you go
that was
to
Tim Duncan.
What I'm saying,
Yes.
once Timmy
Once
left,
Duncan.
once Timmy left, you go to Toronto. That's Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry was the leader of that team.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fleet, that's not Kawhi.
Okay.
And so when chaos is erupting, Skip, you need somebody that can't just be with their play. You got to have a calming, a soothing voice of somebody that's in the locker room.
Okay. So then Doc told Ballmer, we took off right before the pandemic hit. I know the Lakers won one of those games, but the Clippers were starting to click at a high level where the chemistry was starting to percolate. They were starting to get the feel for each other,
Right.
starting to vibe off each other in ways they hadn't all year.
Right.
And Doc said, rug gets jerked right out from underneath us because we have to take 5 months off when we needed reps.
Right.
I told you, LeBron needed rest, they needed reps.
Right.
So again, that's a legitimate excuse, and this might be the most legitimate at all. When they got to bubble time, half the team didn't want to go to the bubble, and when they got to the bubble, half the team didn't want to stay in the bubble, right?
Yeah.
Are these legit excuses? Yes, yes, yes.
And notice the three players who were constantly trying to leave the bubble. Patrick Beverley, and notice the three players who were constantly trying to leave the bubble. Patrick Beverley, Montrezl Harrell, and Lou Williams, the three members of that little clique. So, could it be that they were conspiring against being a part of that bubble tournament because they still had some subconscious feelings about the new aura or the new energy that was brought onto the team by Kawhi Leonard, viewing him as a player who was trying to take all the credit for a championship that they might win, even though they believed that he was not putting in the work to ingratiate himself to them? Because deep down, I believe that they thought that he should have been trying to ingratiate himself to them because they were there before him. And a lot of those type of thought patterns are what submarine teams that have the chance to win a championship. Players who are just good, thinking that they should be viewed on an equivalent level to a great player. And I'm not absolving Kawhi Leonard of his culpability in this issue because he does have a lot of fault that he must accept himself.
But Ballmer wants results, and all he knows is, wait a second, we're up 3-1. In every game, we were 8.5-point favorites. The Lakers were only 6-point favorites over Denver each of those nights. We were 8.5. So the odds makers are saying, you're even better than over Denver than the Lakers were.
Right.
That means that you guys should have been, would have been favored over the Lakers if you just gotten to the Lakers. And what happened? You're up 3-1, and you got a 16-point lead in the first closeout, and a 19 in the second closeout, and a 12 in the third closeout, and you can't close?
Yeah, and therein what blows up Doc's argument. Even though they might have been playing well and they had to go on a hiatus, maybe they didn't. Maybe guys didn't want to go to the bubble, and maybe guys once they got to the bubble didn't want to stay. Steve Ballmer is saying through all of that, you were still up 3-1.
Absolutely, that's what it comes down to.
Need you to explain to me how you're up 3-1 under all those circumstances,
right?
Because all those circumstances were still in play when you got the 3-1 lead. So you can't use that as an argument from losing 3-1 when that was the same situation that got you to 3-1.
Correct. He was asking Doc, what did you do to change the momentum back to our side?
Right.
What did you do to fix the problem? Nothing, because I don't think he made any strategic change.
Well, here's the thing. The mistake that the Clippers made is that they were signing players to try to keep them from the Lakers. If you notice, Marcus Morris, they gave up a first-round draft pick because Marcus was going to go to the Lakers. So they gave up a first-round draft pick so they could get it.
They did the right thing in getting Marcus Morris. Marcus Morris actually played very well for them. I'm not quite sure if he was worth a first-round draft pick, but he became worth that once the Knicks realized that there was a bidding war between the Lakers and the Clippers. Had the Lakers gotten Marcus Morris and the Clippers not been able to get him, they would not have been able to defeat the Lakers. I'm not quite sure if they would have beaten them anywhere in the bubble with all of those chemistry issues going on. But I thought that it was a brilliant move by the Lakers to sign Markieff Morris in response to Marcus, because now you have that twin effect where even had they played, I don't think that Marcus would have been as effective going against his brother like that. So the Lakers, they pulled off some shrewd moves in response to what the Clippers were doing.
Reggie Jackson, he wanted to, Well, we're going to get Reggie Jackson, and we'll promise you more playing time than what you would get with the Lakers. They signed Joakim Noah. Skip, Joakim Noah hasn't been good since his daddy won the French Open.
I think he could help them.
He could have helped them.
I do think
Skip, I like Zubac, but Zubac is not a defensive guy. He can't do Skip. It took Dwight Howard, who was 3-time Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, that was bad that Doc decided to not at least give Joakim Noah a chance to guard Jokic. I mean, it couldn't have been much worse than what Zubac was doing. Zubac is a nice little player. He reminds me a lot of Luke Longley. But he does not have the foot movement or the defensive skill set to do anything with Jokic, who's a player that can score from past the three-point line. When you have a player who can shoot like that and score from past the three-point line, it makes them appear to be quicker than they actually are when you're trying to guard them because you're worried about them pulling up. So I think that, Joakim Noah could have helped defensively. I also think that Doc probably should have given Reggie Jackson a few more minutes because he was making his shots when he was out there on the floor. Doc just didn't seem to have a handle on what to do. Because once again, in that first round matchup, if Porzingis doesn't get hurt, they might have got knocked out in the first round.
Turn back the hands of time, who look like the Dwight Howard of old as opposed to an old Dwight Howard.
Okay.
Zubac can't do anything with that.
Okay. So it was championship or bust.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And I don't care what you say, what Kawhi said or didn't say. In the end, if you do that, if you failed that miserably, that was an epic fail, you're going to be gone, which is why the next day I said, I don't think Doc's going to last.
I believe, Skip, had they gotten to the Western Conference Finals, they'd lose to the Lakers in 6 or 7. I believe he could have stomached that.
Sure,
but you up 3-1 against the Nuggets?
No.
He couldn't stomach that.
Nope.
But I still believe if those guys says, look, Steve, look, it was the bubble, the COVID-19 hit, things happen, but Doc's a damn good coach.
Mm.
And
Yeah, that's the problem. He's a damn good coach. He's just not a good enough coach to coach that team. When you're talking about championship coaches, they come few and far between. There are a lot of damn good coaches, Rick Adelman and George Karl and, those type of guys. Those are damn good coaches, but they never win championships.
he's the guy that we should run it back. But if you listen to what guys said when Paul George was talking after Game 7, talking about we ought to run it back, and guys sitting there folding, they got their arms folded up, rolling their eyes like you need to sit down before we swing on you.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
Oh, but that's what we see. That's where the leadership come in. Mm-hmm. You see, everybody see, Skip, everybody says, oh, leadership. No, there's a premium, there's a price to be paid for that. Mm. And that's why my guy, Go James, and that guy right there can never beat. Because he think as long as I go play, and that's fine as long as you're winning. But when you get a situation in crises, it's not about winning, Skip. You need a soothing, you need a calming voice to say, guys, this is what we need to do. This is what's going on. This is how we're going to get out of it. All he wants to do. And then he gave up everything. To get Kawhi Leonard, what you got to do, Skip? You got to tell him.
So is that why LeBron James, I mean, not to bring this up, but is that why he just left Dwayne Wade high and dry in Miami? And then in Cleveland, he has Dwayne Wade traded. And even Wade approached LeBron like, bro, did you know about this? Don't try to act like you didn't know I was about to be traded. And then LeBron goes to L.A. and gets that whole team traded. Like, is that the type of leadership you're talking about? I'll say this. LeBron has proven to be a better leader than Kawhi. But, I mean, that's not really saying much.
Then it's okay, we're going to give you 20 games off a year if that's what you want. If you don't want to practice, you ain't got to practice. If you want your fiance, your significant other to ride on the team playing with the kids, so be it. He gave up all that.
I agree. He should have stayed in Toronto.
Oh, I guess leadership is after you win the Western Conference Finals, you go sit on the floor by yourself away from the team.
Don't do
right?
that,
That's
don't do
leadership.
That. See what you trying to do.
That's just normal LeBron theatrics. And he's going to sit on the ground for a while because that's going to reflect the NBA ratings. Because all that Marxist shit that the NBA has been pushing has their ratings sitting on the ground just like LeBron.
Fine. It's the only way to fly.
Hold on.
I'll go sit over here and I'll bask in my own glory.
No, that ain't what he was doing, Skip. He wasn't basking because he said the job ain't done. The job isn't done. You hear everybody, yes, we're extremely happy because we don't know how often these opportunities will present themselves. But we're not done. We're not done, Skip, baby. We got something that's, I just wish they didn't let me get that pregame pep talk.
That is true.
Yeah, let me get in the bubble. You know what I mean? I called LeBron about that, baby. Let me get in the bubble, please.
Have me on Zoom. Let me get our pregame pep talk. I am ready.
Yeah.
I am ready, Jenny.
The cakewalk has not
There
finished.
you go.
They would let you
Why
on
you
the
doing
bus.
that?
You
4 more
wouldn't stop.
games.
You would be everywhere.
You know what? You ought to be ashamed of you.
I could imagine LeBron looking at Shannon Sharp popping up in the bubble. He'd be like, Shannon, I told you there's a court order that stipulates that we have to maintain 1,000 yards of distance. Shannon's talking about, but baby, I want to be here in your time of need. I'm trying to help you get over the hump. Time to beat the heat. But anyway, Kawhi and Paul George, they have a lot to redeem themselves for next season. Peace.